Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cranbourne East Secondary Podcast for 2021. It's so good to have all of you back. Once again, I got myself here today, Mr. Lone, for those of you who haven't met me, especially those in Year 7.
Yep, and I'm Mr. Y, so Mr. Young. And so yeah, also if you don't know me, I teach science, STEM, and food tech this year. So
Yep.
that'll be fun.
Science and Mythbusters, which is technically science as well. Yeah.
Yeah, really good science.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
A panel of science teachers today. We have a guest today, actually. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Mr. Chamberlain, teach science, but primarily I'm pretty fortunate I get to teach VC chemistry this year.
Cool.
Which I'm looking forward to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I don't know about the both of you, but as you can tell, we aren't at school because this is recorded in the school holidays. Everyone's holidays been all right? Yeah.
Yeah, they've been pretty fun.
Yeah. Anyone go anywhere much?
No, was going to
Yeah.
go away, but having a new baby makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
true.
But looking going away later on this year, which would be nice.
Yeah. How about
Yeah.
you, Mr. Young?
I didn't go anywhere, but I definitely did a lot of extra stuff that I used to not do.
Yeah.
Like you probably saw on my social media, I baked a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much every day.
Yeah, almost every day. And then I got into boxing.
Ah.
Yeah,
nice.
it's been pretty fun. It's nice. It gets me really, really active. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if it wasn't for COVID, and we'll talk a bit about COVID in a bit, but if it wasn't for COVID, actually, Mr. Chamberlain and I were thinking of going to even Disneyland America. We would have actually gone already and been back. So, of course, that didn't happen. But where I went, I did go hang out in Bright instead, which is up north. Went for a few hikes, and kind of like you, Mr. Young, I think I spent a lot of this holiday just doing stuff that I normally wouldn't have time for during school. So, past week and last week, I started learning to drive a manual car. So I normally drive automatic. So, learning the different clutches, changing gears, that was new for me. And I even ended up going to my cupboard at home and I did a Marie Kondo makeover, which is pretty much now my clothes, instead of being folded flat like that, they get folded into, and you can Google this later, I might add it into the description, but you fold it up almost scrunch it, almost roll it up into a standing form, and you stack them like that so that it looks better, feels better.
I
Yeah.
thought you meant
Takes up less space too.
Yeah, more space, way more space.
when you said Marie Kondo, I thought you were holding things to you and going, this brings me joy. This is what brings me joy. I was see ya.
Yeah, does this spark joy? Well, that's the thing. It's when I was looking at the tutorial online on YouTube, it's every single time you folded the clothes, you're meant to, and I quote, lovingly press the clothes to crease it out to thank them for supporting you. So every time that you fold, you crease it out to thank it for supporting you. Fold it again, thank it again, and then you roll it up. So it's a very Japanese way of thinking because they have a belief that inanimate objects also have spirits in them and stuff like that, which is where that all came from.
Yeah,
that's the random stuff I did in holiday. What's it like being a first-time father for you, Mr. Chamberlain?
Tiring. It's pretty much you have to feed someone every 2 to 3 hours, and you probably get naps throughout the day if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So I'm living off coffee, which I just finished, and I think a couple hours of sleep a day.
Oh, that's rough.
Get
Do you
used to
even
it.
get time to play do you still get time to play video games anymore?
Yeah, so I've been playing a game on my Switch called Hades, which is actually really good. And so if Ivy's not going down into her bassinet, I'll actually have her across my arms and have my hands out like this.
Yeah.
And then I'm playing it either on the TV or handheld.
Yeah.
If you do have time, you have a Switch, I would highly recommend Hades. It's a roguelite. I died a lot. I think I died 16 times before I made my first run through the game. But yeah, no, it's really good. It's nice to play. There's other games we can probably talk about later as well.
Yeah.
We're thinking about,
Yeah.
Just really quickly, if you don't know what Hades is, it's basically this dungeon crawler where you have to slowly get through a dungeon, but every time your HP runs to 0, you have to restart the whole dungeon. The layout resets and you get different perks. So yeah, it's a really nice kind of replayable game.
And it's based on Greek mythology as well, so there's lots of references there with the deities and all that kind of stuff, and different weapons and stuff, and you unlock more things which make it easier. I did see a speed run that someone did where it literally took them 30 minutes to finish the game from a fresh save file, which I'm just like, I don't know how you did that. It took me 10 hours.
It took me 30 minutes to get through the first, like,
section of Tartarus.
like not even like win, like just like
get through Tartarus.
Oh man.
But yeah, if you end up playing it and you want to talk shady or anything, I'm sure we'll be more than happy to talk to you at school about it.
Yeah, it was on discount for a while on the eShop actually, if I remember, and
That's when I picked it
I
up.
think it was definitely ranked number 1 in the eShop for a while. I don't know if it's an indie game as well. I don't know if it might probably going to win some sort of like indie game of the year award for the eShop for sure, in my opinion.
I think it won the European like Gaming Association Game of the Year.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been doing that. I've been on my Switch. I've been mainly playing. Like, if you remember from the podcast last year, I did say that there was going to be a game that I was going to play over school holidays that was going to take like hundreds of hours, and I finished it. Actually did. So, Tales of Vesperia, I did finish it, but there's so much post game stuff because the main game itself was like 40 hours, so that's nothing. But then post game, I've spent another 80 hours or so on like post-game dungeons. There's some dungeons that go for like hundreds of levels just for the sake of it. So
I think it was Tales of Vesperia. Did that come out earlier on like PS3 or something like that?
yeah, so it was an old
'cause I
game.
played that on
yeah,
PS3.
yeah. Then the definitive edition came out on Switch as well, so I've been playing that.
The
yeah.
Tales series is really good.
Yeah.
I've only watched the anime.
Yeah, there's there's
I
animations
watched
of the games, but because I like them because the storyline are in depth, where they usually deal with like some real world issues like discrimination as well, for example. And what I found with Tales of Vesperia, it was very much like what's right, what's wrong. So of course that world has their own laws, and then the main character kind of like becomes like a vigilante, taking laws into their own hand, where his best friend is actually like a knight. So they argue a lot about what's right, what's wrong, what can the police, the knights, what can they do? They haven't done anything. And then the best friend's like, nah, the only way to change the knights is if you're actually in the knights, and you can do it like that. It's kind of like, best way to describe it was almost like Code Geass.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah,
I was
Code
thinking
Geass.
that.
So they're like between the two main characters,
Such
you know?
good anime.
Yeah.
So good. It's one of my favorites.
I know, right?
Yeah.
To this day, I still say it's one of the best endings of all time.
Yes.
Best anime endings of all time. But yes, I mean, like we said, that's our school holiday. Hopefully yours was really good as well. But yeah, looking ahead into 2021, I really do hope that it is a better year ahead. So far, I mean, in Australia, we're very lucky. Our numbers at the moment are pretty good compared to the rest of the world.
Across the board at the moment, isn't it?
I thought it was only Victoria that was zero.
Oh, Perth would be. It's been 14 days zero. Give me transmission.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because on the day of recording this is still, what, 20th?
Yeah.
Jan?
Yeah.
It's the 20th, something like that?
Yeah, it's the 20th.
Yes, 20th of Jan. Got it right. So, yep. But yeah, I think we were quite worried last year with, the virus and the outbreak, what might happen. And so for me, when I was watching news and thinking about like virus and outbreak, I was thinking back of like even previous years, how my only experience with viruses in real life would have been, from where my home country is, Hong Kong. There's the bird flu, swine flu. There's been many not pandemics, but epidemics. But then in terms of like, since we talk about video games a lot, and viruses, one of the things that I remember playing growing up was a series of video games called Resident Evil, where it talks about how there's a strain of virus which has caused these dead people to, come back alive, and they become zombies. And then they talk about like virus mutations. So it starts with the T virus and later the C virus, and the different viruses, what they do is as they mutate, the monsters get like stronger, the zombies get stronger. So, even right now with COVID, we're hearing a bit about like virus mutations a bit as well, especially in the UK, it's pretty dangerous as well. So yeah, I mean, and even in America a few years ago, I remember there was this time. I don't know if it was a virus, but there was like a mini zombie scare in America a few years ago. I
Wasn't it
remember.
in Florida, I think it was.
Yeah, it would have been Florida. Of all places, definitely. Yeah.
Wait,
so
was it the flesh eating one?
yeah, like people like. Yeah, flesh eating like the flesh of people's faces or something. I don't know. It was like on the news. Yeah, so it was pretty graphic. So we won't go too much details of the graphics, but yeah, well, like I remember zombies being a pretty common topic that the kids wanted us to talk about. So what's our experiences with like zombie-like games and stuff like that?
So I talked to this about to my kids a lot, and it was Last of Us. So I never actually got to play it, but I always watched the playthroughs on YouTube.
Yeah.
And boy, okay, so they have this whole fantasy thing where people are infected with I think it was a fungus.
That is a fungus, yeah.
And then they actually turn into a zombie because the fungus actually controls them. But the thing is, it's kind of weird. I think you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's actually a actual fungus that does this to ants, and it's called cordyceps. And basically what happens with cordyceps is it hijacks the ant's brain, makes it move towards a bright location on a plant, and then it'll actually make the plant bite its incisors, so it's like little teeth into the plant to plant itself in, and then it'll actually start growing out from the ant's head.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's actually a possibility because it can mutate. I think it's mutated.
Oh, that's so good.
I think it's mutated into cats as well.
What?
Yeah, so like
I don't know that one.
so apparently it's infected cats, but like it actually doesn't do anything to the cat.
Oh, that's lucky.
Yeah, it just makes them very
Because that's a massive jump from insects and all that kind of stuff into mammalians.
yeah.
Because if it can infect a cat, well, technically then it
infect
could
us.
possibly infect other mammalians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
but with cats, all it makes them do is like, apparently, according to the uni lecture I was in, like all they do is like they rub their face on your face a lot. So that's like a trained behavior thing where it's like trying to get them to pass on cordyceps into a human.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean that's kind of like how COVID started. I mean, it didn't start with humans, of course. It started with like bats. You know?
Yeah.
So
Well,
when we talk about jumping a species barrier, that's a huge deal. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the big things with like the swine flu and avian flu and all that kind of stuff as well, is if there's enough mutations and all that kind of stuff, because we share some genetic structure, then it can possibly jump. But it's not very common. But the more permutations, the more changes you have, then more likely.
Yes. I mean, so it sounds like some zombies classically were always about some sort of virus, and then these days we can see a fungus. So viruses and fungus are different things. I know this has become a science lesson because we've got 3 science teachers here, but that's fine. But it's I think it's good knowledge to know, especially in the midst of this virus that's going on right now, because unless we know what we're dealing with, then we know what we need to do to actually combat it. You wouldn't use hand sanitizer or soap as much to deal with a fungus, for example, not as much compared to maybe you use antifungal cream, stuff like that, So that's why it's important to know how specific diseases start, in my opinion. But so Last of Us, same thing. I only watch gameplays. For me, Resident Evil, don't bother with the movies. Do not bother with the movies.
If you want to watch something and you don't want to have to think, and well, even then it's still terrible.
Even then, the animated movies are still better.
I haven't actually
even
watched
on Netflix, there's an animated one now, I believe. I've put it on my watch list. But with Resident Evil, it's the reason why the game was so groundbreaking back then, and in Japan, it's called Biohazard, right? Bio meaning like living hazard, living hazard. It was the first game to be classified under the genre of like survival horror, kind of. Yeah, survival horror. And so pretty much the initial game was that you're a team of a rescue team, you get stuck in a mansion, and for some reason you're trying to rescue the members of your other team, but they're coming back alive from the dead, and you're trying to come out of this mansion. So it started with a very basic premise, the first Resident Evil. There's now 7 Resident Evil games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 0. And there's a whole bunch of spin-offs as well. But there's an 8th one coming out actually soon, and the trailer looks really good. So, it's called Village. Yeah.
Ooh.
Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's 8th one coming out soon. Yeah.
It's 4. I think 4 is the one that came out. That's my favorite. I think.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
I was about to talk about that because like talk about games jumping genres. That's also an interesting thing to look at. So I think one of the reasons why, even if you're not into zombie games, but if you, let's say you're into video game history, a good thing to look at Resident Evil as a case study is also because from Resident Evil 1 to 3, it was always a very survival horror. It was very clunky. So you walk around the room, you move very slowly. And then when 4 came out, it became game of the year because they changed the camera angle to behind the person. It was more action, right? Third-person shooter. It became very popular. And so Capcom, the company behind Resident Evil, when they saw this, they're like, wow, this is what people want. So then when Resident Evil 5 came out, it became even more action.
Yeah.
And people were like, okay, it's not as scary anymore, but it's still okay. And then when 6 came out, it was like a full-on action game, explosions everywhere, everything. And people were like, nah, this is... And that's actually ranked as the worst game in the entire series. And then, so what Capcom, the company, did, they changed it in Resident Evil 7. They changed it back to a more survival horror, a lot less action. And I believe you can even play it with VR. And people say it's super scary as a game. So it became a really highly ranked game again. So, so that's the history of Resident Evil and Biohazard, if you ever play the games. The storyline does get more and more convoluted. If you want, even play the first one, you can play the basic
all
one.
the background story and how it spreads and the organization behind it all and all that kind of stuff. It gets quite outlandish, but it's still very much enjoyable.
Definitely, yeah. Have you played any of the Resident Evil games or any other zombie games other than Last of Us and stuff like that?
Oh, there was that one game that came out recently. Like you play as a biker.
Oh,
And then it's like
thousands of zombies
like
just running at you.
hordes of zombies
Yeah.
that run at you, and you have to like.
I know what you're talking about. I haven't played
I
it.
haven't played it. I don't
forgot
remember the
the
name
name of
either. I don't remember. I just remember seeing on Facebook every once in a while just gameplay of it.
Yeah, and then there's Dying Light, I think.
Yes.
The one where you're like parkouring across
Yeah.
everything.
So it's like a more probably like Resident Evil 6. But yeah, you got resource management, parkour, and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and then was there also what's the island games? Because that's what Dying Light was.
Dead
based on.
Island.
Dead Island.
The trailers for those were amazing.
Because Dead Island 1 was pretty good. Dead Island 2. And I think the Dead Island 3 was like a Kickstarter and people put money into it and it just hasn't gone anywhere.
Oh boy.
They haven't gotten money back. So be mindful of backing things because sometimes your money just disappears. But it's the thing I find interesting in all these games, for the most part, the transmission of the virus or the fungal, whatever it is, is through bites or anything like that, it getting into your blood through that way. So it's not necessarily from touching whatever. And there doesn't seem to be any vaccine or immunity or anything like that. And also, although they have that in common, the types of zombies are quite different.
Yeah.
So some have
100%.
like really slow moving, some have like super fast moving. That's the same in movies as well.
Yeah.
And like even within Resident Evil itself, you've got your basic sort of little walking around zombie.
The stumbler.
And then you've got like the big bad bosses who are pretty much impossible to kill purposely.
Yeah.
Because they've mutated so much.
Yeah.
You always have the crawlers that are like just the torso up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like TV shows, for example. I remember like The Walking Dead, which I remember Miss Strickland loves Walking Dead actually. Those zombies, they're like slow shuffling zombies, but they're walkers, but they overwhelm you with their sheer numbers.
Yeah.
And then you got zombies like, as Mr. Chamberlain was saying, the running ones, and like World War Z. I remember they can climb. Train to Busan, if you haven't watched that, definitely watch it. It's on Netflix, Korean film, but do check the rating if you're underage. But I think that's like one of the best zombie movies of all time, in my opinion.
There's supposed to be Train to Busan 2.
There is a second one that it already is out. It already is out. Not as good as the first one, they said. But I think the interesting thing about zombie movies is when it's like Train to Busan, where yes, zombies are the monsters, but then you see human behavior and how they act around these zombies, and you wonder, are the humans the actual monsters? And so you think about you know, and there's been a lot of debate online about, you know, this pandemic, for example, you know, like some governments run things certain ways, some governments run things another way, and some people look at some governments like, oh, that's inhumane, you can't do that, and some people look at other ones like, that's way too relaxed, you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see human behavior around viruses and how they react, and I think that's interesting to look at. So, you know, Train to Busan's like that. It's got like crazy action, but then when you see the humans interact with each other, you wonder, like, you know, the politics behind it, like, you know, that definitely is quite interesting as well. But those zombies run like crazy, yeah.
Like, yeah, you can.
Because zombies were a massive few years ago, and there used to be lots of literature and it's coming out in books and like how to survive and all that kind of stuff. And I read a few of those, and I started thinking, well, how would I actually respond?
Yeah.
In that circumstance?
Well, that's actually my question to you guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so one thing that I think is pretty cool is if you're like a main character in a zombie game or zombie anime or anything, but let's take it in the like perspective that you are a civilian survivor, and let's just say you're at school.
Okay.
So if you're at school and you get a call, like zombie apocalypse has happened, you get a call saying, okay, we can only come get you and save you on the next day. So you have to survive overnight at school. Where would you go on school grounds, and what would you grab to like bring with you?
So
This question's also open to the viewers as well.
it depends on what type. So first I'll be thinking, okay, what are the type of zombies that I'm dealing with? And that reminded me of that other video game where the guy's in the shopping center.
Oh, the one, it's by Capcom as well, but I know what you mean. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the shopping center, and and you build items
Yeah.
to customize your own weapons and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like that. Are you planning to customize your some
No,
sort of
not
defense?
necessarily, but you need something to defend yourself. But
True.
so I'd be thinking, well, what type of zombies am I dealing with? Am I dealing with the slow, lumbering ones like the Walkers in The Walking Dead, or am I dealing with really crazy ones like in 28 Weeks Later, who are just like super fast and aggressive and all that kind of stuff? I'm hoping that it's the slower ones, because then I could possibly outrun. One thing about your question, like, was I the only person on school grounds at the time, or were there other people and they've all become infected, or?
Let's say that it's a mix of people have become infected,
Yeah.
and there's also because school ground is where we have a lot of big brain energy. So that's where we have other zombies from outside of school coming in as well.
Yeah, true. If there's other people who aren't infected, duty of care, I'm going to make sure that I look after them students as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be able to stay in one place then, because I'd have to be going around seeing if I can find people, and I'd have to get to the PA system at some point.
Well, one thing is that zombies usually do not comprehend human language.
Yeah.
So
So
that's pretty beneficial.
yeah, so you could get to the PA at some point and direct people to a different area. Zombies generally do react to just big loud sounds and to lights and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Some do, some don't,
Some do,
depending on
some
the
don't.
movie. Yeah.
I'll have to have a think.
Yeah, because like, you know, in terms of weaknesses, like I remember, like, for example, in Walking Dead, it's like they're sensitive to smell, for example. So if the people, they put the zombie body parts all over them, they could hide through the zombies. But I wouldn't be
Risking it?
I wouldn't risk it. I wouldn't risk trying to, unless it's an emergency situation and I've got like no other chance and I'm backed up in a corner. Then I might try maybe throwing something far away to make the noise go over there, or, you know, turn on the lights or whatever it may be. But I would imagine myself hiding in Miss Leishman's lab, the lab tech lab. And not because we're science teachers, but I mean, the one disadvantage of the lab tech lab is that there's a lot of windows, so I could easily be seen. But I know there's some food in there. I know there's snacks in there, and I know that there will be the tools and resources I need in there to maybe build something or to create something, to either create a diversion or some sort of defense. compared to, let's say, a classroom, for example, or any of the offices. I don't know. That's what my thoughts would be.
And the thing is with that, you've got multiple exits as well. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exits
Yeah,
in
true.
that space compared to others.
Yeah.
I have done lots of demonstrations and accidentally lost eyebrows and burnt things and exploded things. So
Yeah.
if I had access to the chem stall, there's tons of things I could do with that.
Yeah.
Just
In terms of-
recreate it.
Yeah. Just be it mindful
Yeah.
that it doesn't explode near me and
Yeah.
at the zombies instead.
Yeah.
I also think another good spot, if you could get up there, would be the roof, and that's not to say start climbing on the roofs of the school or anything. But if it's like the slow walker type, they can't really think and climb well.
True.
So getting on there would be useful. But yeah, you need something to defend yourself with. Like the explosions and that kind of stuff can work, but then they'll also attract the attention of other
Yeah,
zombies.
like think about the sound
Yeah.
factor as well.
You could use that more defensively and like set up something further away or
Yeah.
lob something or
Yeah.
that to distract them so they go over into that space. I wonder if anything will be worthwhile in like the tech rooms. If there's something you could use.
Yeah, like in the woodworks room or the metalworks. Yeah.
Like get a welder or like a blowtorch. Just like
Yeah, because tradition, like in movies and all that kind of stuff, the zombies will start banging on.
yeah.
Like even in Dead Space, which is not a traditional sort of zombie game, like those things can just destroy glass and they just jump through and they're aggressive, all that kind of stuff. So you'd want to hide, like Mr. Leishman's lab would be good, but you'd want to hide as well. Although that does have extra classrooms around it, which they would have to get through first.
Yeah, it does. Well,
And like
some
it's-
of the exits, but not all of them.
And it's always locked. So it's
Yeah.
like it's really hard for them to actually open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that's a pretty good spot because you can exits on the corner. There's a bike shed there, so maybe someone's accidentally left the bike there.
Yeah.
Just go out.
True.
True.
How about you, Mr. Young?
I'm wondering if there's like a hose, like a higher pressure hose. Because like the goal is to survive overnight.
Yes.
You don't have to actually like escape because there's a rescue team coming for you.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm like, if there's a high pressure hose, I can just use that to like spray zombies away from me.
We do have the actual thing where you attach the hose to.
Yeah.
I'm
So
trying
it's
to remember where the hose is. I'm pretty sure there is a
Really?
couple on school
I didn't know that.
around.
No,
I don't
no
know as
idea.
well.
Pretty sure we do have. Well, we did have one. It might have been taken out, but yeah, they had an attachment which you can plug in, and then you can attach two high pressure hoses to it, so there's water. Because the fire trucks can't get into the middle of the agora, so they need a way to.
I would
Like a
have to-
hydrant.
Yeah, true. But it's like, I don't have to worry about, like, it's a zombie apocalypse. I don't really have to worry about water bills at that point. I'm like,
Or damage or anything
no,
like that.
I'm like, survival, man. Survival.
Yeah, I think I would go. If I could get to the food tech rooms, I'd go get some snacks and all that kind of stuff. If I could get in there,
Yeah.
and then and this is a bit of a trek though. If there's lots of zombies, try and get into Mr. Leishman's lab to get some stuff to protect myself, and then get onto the roof. Because then if anything gets on the roof, I can knock it down, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then if need be, I don't know if I'd hold my weight. I can run across the covered areas in the agora from one building to the next.
Sure.
And there is windows up there as well.
Yeah, that is a possibility. But yeah,
Be pretty interesting.
I mean, the only time that I've ever been put in a situation that's remotely close was actually a few years ago. They came to there was this company that was started in America, and then they came to Australia to try it out. And so what the company does is they hire out a whole factory, like an abandoned factory, and then they hire like hundreds of actors to be zombies, and they put them in makeup. And then what they do is you pay like a fee of, I think it was around $200 per person. It was
That's steep.
Yeah, but you got to think of the cost of all the actors
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, that's
warehouse
true,
and
that's
all
true.
the items and stuff.
pretty much what happens is we actually go rock up to the place. They actually deck us up in like bulletproof vests. And the guns are made in a way where it's the actual weight of an actual gun, but it just shoots like lasers out. And the actors have got like receptors on their body to kind of like feel when they get shot, so that they know to like stumble back on purpose. And so on your little what do you call it, on your scope, it tells you how much health you have, how much ammo you have, because of course, the actors don't come up and they don't grab you, they don't bite you. But when they're within a certain range, they're like within. I think it's like if they're within 3 meters of you or something like that, that's when your HP starts depleting. So you need to find ways to actually shoot them. And the interesting thing is actually like 2 weeks before you actually go to the place, they actually send you an email and they teach you some techniques in terms of how do you break into a room properly when you have a team. Like someone has to fan left, fan right, check the doors behind you, because the zombies will ambush you if you don't do that proper technique. So you have to make your whole way through the entire factory, upstairs, downstairs. There's other actors who act as like NPCs, which is like they talk to you and then you decide what to do with them. They're like, oh, help me, I need you to help grab this item for me, and you don't know if they've been bitten or not, so you don't know if you want to interact with them, so you can shoot them, you can leave them be, so it's so many choices, and then
Trust no one.
yeah, pretty much, and trust no one, because literally when they send you the email 2 weeks before you do the zombie thing, they even tell you, like for example, within your team, you can't tell your other team members this, but this is your personal objective as well, which might include backstabbing your team a little bit as well. There's stuff like that as well.
Some extra social things.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. And so what happens is you make your way through the entire factory, and then at the very end, I remember we're at this balcony, and I know it sounds like spoilers, but the company's already packed up. They're already gone anymay. I don't know if they still do it anymore.
We should do it.
But what happened is you reach this balcony, and then you see this giant roar, and the whole factory's shaking, and we're like, what is that? And then you can see this guy come out. He's wearing jeans, but it's prosthetics. It looks like the main boss in Resident Evil 2. He's got giant arm, and he's lumbering around this giant zombie, right? And then so our job was that you had to take down that zombie. And so when we went to the bottom floor, he starts chasing us around. We're shooting at it. It's not losing any HP or anything. But then what we realized was that there's a few buttons around. And then so what we had to do was bait him to certain areas. And when we press the button, the factory's top roof would actually open up the blinds. And then when the light comes in, you can actually see the person starting to steam coming out, and you're shooting at it to try and finally defeat it. Oh my goodness, it was crazy. Yeah, so that's my closest real life zombie experience. I know there's Zero Latency as well, which is a VR version. Have you guys heard of Zero Latency or played?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to explain
Well,
what
I haven't played it, but it's pretty much you have virtual reality or VR, but instead of being just in a standard computer, it's on a backpack.
Yep.
And you got your goggles, and it's this massive warehouse which you walk around, and it's got different things where you'll go around shooting zombies, and you might walk on a bridge and all that kind of stuff, and you'll go up and down, and it's all hooked in together. So the actual stuff that they've got set up is then in the actual VR as well, so you know where you are. And sometimes with some people in VR, because you're in the one spot, you get disorientated, but with this you can actually walk around, and there's proximity sensors that tells you where to stop and all that kind of stuff. So you get that sort of feeling, but they don't have to hire the actors and stuff. So that realism isn't as probably as strong.
Yeah. But it'd be cheaper, maybe.
I think it's $100, so it's not that much cheaper. I think your one's the better experience of the two.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it was a workout. Running with the gun, running with the armor, the helmet. It was tough work. We were sweating by the end of it. Yeah, for sure.
How did you feel throughout the experience? With the adrenaline pumping, did you get
how
was the clarity in terms of your thinking?
There were a few times where, especially in the ambush, where we would just have to react. I think I actually found it more. I actually preferred it when I could see the zombies they're running. I found it more harder to keep my nerves under control when I'm walking through an empty hallway, and it's pitch black, and all you have is just your torch. Right, and you do have your team with you, but at times you got to spread out. And we do have one comms officer, so that person is in charge of communicating with the people in the control room, and they tell you where to go and what to do and so on. So in terms of communicating with each other, we had no walkie-talkies ourselves. We had to shout across to each other. So it was definitely a very crazy experience in that sense. Trying to keep your nerves under control. Of course, at the end of the day, it's still actors, and so it wasn't too bad. But I think the worst room was the one where we walked into a hospital room and you could just see all these hospital beds with cloths over the bodies. So you never know if any of them are going to pop up at you. And so we're all like constantly on alert, you know.
Yeah. It's in video games. That's where we just be like,
everything. Because in video games, you know, like, well, in Resident Evil anyway, you know when there's rooms of calm, right? You walk into a room, there's a typewriter, the music changes.
But then you're
safe,
also like,
right?
But then they also do that false thing where it's like the music is like calm for like a bad reason, and you're like, I trust nothing now.
Yeah. If you want to watch a scary movie or play a scary game and you don't want to be scared, just turn off the volume, mute. It's not.
Yep.
That's always the way.
Every time I show up to a horror movie, I'm really bad with horror movie, by the way. Like the only reason I'm going is because I have crazy FOMO.
Yeah.
And my mates are going.
Yeah.
I'll sit with my knees up, and I literally watch like this.
Oh yeah.
See, for me, for some horror movies, I'm just like, it depends, I think, on the genre, because some I just find funny. Others, I'm just like, actually, that's pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
And if you've ever, I think it was a challenge when I was in school where people would watch horror movies at night at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh wow.
By yourself.
No.
With all the lights off.
Yeah. Thank you.
Or if you do it with headphones. It's even worse. It is so just like,
I went through The Conjuring, and I went to a friend's place to watch it, and they had 3D surround sound, and I was like,
oh man.
I think I needed a diaper that night.
I remember watching some. I always find that the more scary films are usually from the Asian countries. Yeah, Japanese, Thai movies. I remember watching the original Japanese Grudge, and that was. That's the sound I make at night when I sleep apnea. So Laura's listen to that every night.
I love how like both of you, like you went to that whole warehouse, you had zero latency, and I'm like, maybe for coffee. That's
or the little boy. Yeah. But yeah, speaking of that, do you guys have any recommended movies or TV shows that you would give to our audience? Yeah.
There was. I started watching a French dubbed thing, which is actually quite popular on Netflix at the moment, Lupin. So it's like the gentleman thief. But I started getting back into anime as well. It's Mushoku Tensei, is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, so that's based off a light novel, which was like sort of like the father or grandfather of all the modern sort of things, isekai. It's quite good. There's only 2 episodes out so far. Quite like that one.
So yeah, if you don't know what isekai is, it's basically where someone gets reborn into a fantasy world. Typically, it's like a game-esque world. So yeah, it's actually a pretty good watch. My recommended show, I recommended season 1 last time. It was Promised Neverland. Season 2 has just been released, and it's so good. Yeah, I've read the whole thing. I finished it, and Promised Neverland season 2, from what I've read, has so much to offer. Yeah, like it will be such a good watch.
What platform do you watch it on?
So it's kind of
okay. Yeah, we'll go.
Yeah, I know. Okay, yeah, we're the same level. Yeah. We'll leave it. We'll leave it there. The thing that I've been watching on Netflix over the holidays, actually, I wasn't initially looking out for this show. But my wife, she randomly looked at what's trending on Netflix. And so we actually ended up binging all 5 seasons of The World's Toughest Prisons. So it's an interesting concept where the host has to live in a prison for like a week. Wow. And so the reason I said 5 seasons, but the thing is each season only has 4 episodes. So they visit one different prison each episode. And each episode, the first season was like a pilot season. So it was probably like 30, 40 minutes. And then they changed host for season 2 to season 5. And it's like an hour long. And the host is definitely more interesting in season 2 onwards because that host actually used to be an inmate. So he was wrongly convicted of a murder. And he was in prison for 12 years in the UK for wrongful conviction. So now he's a journalist. He goes around the world looking at different prisons in terms of like the dynamics. It's so interesting because in some prisons, for example, the guards are brutal. Other prisons, the guards are like your friend, right? Other prisons, the guards, the moment they check you in, they do everything outside. But the moment you step inside, then the inmates discipline you. The inmates are the ones that runs things. And there's different gangs, and you can see how different countries, what problems they have, whether it's drugs problems or like usually sexual violence, for example. And then different different countries, depending how rich or how poor they are, you can see their resources, how many guards they have per prisoner, and also most importantly though is what those prisons are doing to trying to rehabilitate the prisoner. Some countries, they've got no ways of doing it. Some countries, they have really strong ways of doing it. And then the debate comes up though that, like for example, in some of the countries like the Scandinavian ones, like Norway, Greenland, up there, some of the, if you look at prison, it looks more like a hotel, right? And then so the debate comes up is, well, these people have done these crimes. Should they be punished for it? But they look like they're enjoying themselves, you know? It's like, where's the balance, stuff like that. So
is it better to have rehabilitated people who won't reoffend?
Yep.
Or punish them? But most of the time, I guess one of the key things is if you punish people too harsh or the conditions are too harsh, they just come out reoffending.
Yeah.
Straight away.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Or like they become worse.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, that's an interesting watch, I would say. Definitely check the ratings of all the shows that we've mentioned.
Make sure it's appropriate.
Yes.
Make sure that's appropriate. So, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, so that basically concludes this episode for today.
Mm-hmm.
So, so as well, just kind of with all of our previous episodes, there will be a Google form at the bottom. So at the bottom of that, you can always fill in some feedback for us. We'll base our next episodes on that feedback. We might also include that question as well about zombies, just so that if you have something you want to say, we might have a look at them and then like go through some of the responses or share some of the responses in our next episode. And also a new feature we've had, which you'll see in the introduction video, is that we now have a notification icon.
Yep.
So you can actually click on that bell now, and that will give you some notification on YouTube when we actually upload a new video.
Yep.
Cool.
So yeah.
Cool. But yeah, thanks for coming today, Mr.
No
Chamberlain.
problems.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
chatting to us. But definitely, you know, if you haven't met Mr. Chamberlain before in previous years, you know, that's something you can chat to him a bit more about now around the yard. Or if you're like a new student or year 7, you know, you might even meet us for the first time. You can talk a bit about this podcast as well if you want to. But if you already know us, then yeah, you can still come up and say hi to us and talk about this episode anyway. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.
See you.
All right, bye.